These are the interviews from Chat City on Preston FM. Don't forget, our show is live weekdays from 10 till noon. Tune in and become part of our family.
Nice to have my next guest in the studio, and always used to conjure up, and I'm sure it will to lots of young people when you think of park ranger. I don't know what it was, but there's always an excitement about that thought of park ranger. And we've got one in the studio now, and it's Paul Lamkin, and Paul is park ranger at Moorpark. So very good morning to you, Paul.
Morning.
So before we talk, we're going to talk about an event that's coming up at Moorpark. But how did you get into being a park ranger?
Well, I've worked for the authority, the Parks Department, now for 27 years. And when I was one of the gardeners and then a technical assistant, Preston was then starting to develop the park ranger service to be started in 2002. So I was in a good position then to apply for one of these positions. It's something which interests me, and having knowledge and background in the job. So I applied for the position, and 2002 became a park ranger.
Right, and I'm sure lots of people listening, as I, know the name park ranger, but if somebody said to me, well, what does the park ranger do? I must admit I wouldn't be 100% sure. So tell us about the role of park ranger.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because a lot of people still say that to me.
Is that right? Yes. Yeah.
And I do have quite a vast different types of jobs, from conservation work, education work, patrolling, policing, working with community groups, developing skills, putting events on, repair works. One day I could be doing repair works of benches. The next minute.
Sorry about that. live phone, you see, on radio, and that's me. Yes, I've got to admit that is mine. So I do apologise about that. Listen, sorry about that, Paul. Off you go.
It's okay. So one day I could be, repairing something on the park, and the next day I could be working with school groups. Now we've just had an event on, which I was involved in, called the Bark for Life, which was all about dogs. Dog activities, dog chipping. It was like a dog show, if you will.
Right, and that must be nice, particularly when you talk about conservation work, is seeing the work that goes on and the results and the outcomes. Has it changed over the years then, the role of park ranger, since you became a park ranger?
Yeah, it has. I mean, years ago we used to do an awful lot of education. We'd be going into the schools, we'd be dealing with schools on a daily basis. But now, as governments have cuts and we have to change our roles and support other colleagues within the council, my job then starts, changing, doing other things within the parks,
And how important are community groups then to your work and to parks themselves in keeping parks, looked after and being attractive to members of the public?
Oh, they're very important, community groups and volunteer groups. I do have one on the park as we speak. It's called the Friends of Moorpark, and they're just a bunch of local people, which is they have regular meetings once a month on the park with myself and my colleague, and we discuss about things we can do to improve the park, and they support me in events, and they do other activities like health walks with me. So they are very important volunteers and community groups.
And I read somewhere that Moorpark is one of the oldest public parks in the country. I didn't realise that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, a lot of people think Cavenham and Millet in Preston is the oldest because it dates back to 1864. But Moorpark actually dates back around 30 years older than that. It goes all the way back to Henry III reign, which is 1200 and something or other.
Yes, well done.
But it was land where people used to graze the animals. It was common land, and they started building around it, roads and houses. and they had to come to a decision that they'll have no green space left, so they decided to keep 100 square acres of parkland.
And is that what Moorpark is? It's 100 square acres?
Yeah, that's right, 100 square acres of parkland, and on there we've got football pitches, tennis courts, bowling greens, cricket, a woodland, a lake, 2 play areas. Now we've got an outdoor gym, which is new to the park.
Is that right? An outdoor gym?
An outdoor gym called the Nada Zone. Preston was the only place in the north to have these outdoor gyms, and luckily enough we had 2.
Well, I know this is probably going to be a totally naive question, but what happens at an outdoor gym? Everything that would happen at an indoor gym?
More or less, yeah. Obviously the equipment is built to withstand the weather conditions. We've got leg press, sit-ups, shoulder press, dips, the basic machinery. I'm quite impressed actually with the stuff, and it's maintained quite regular and inspected by myself as one of my duties.
and given, I mean, the park also surrounded by roads, etc., what about wildlife in the park here in Preston?
Yeah, we lots of our parks have wildlife. Moorpark still has wildlife. We've got owls, lots of different types of birds, and we've got our wetland area. We've also got our lake, which we've got fish in, and the different types of wetland birds.
Right. And I do use parks because I do lots of walking and I love parks. How different is life in the park for you during the winter months and the summer months? Is it very different?
Well, I've still got so many duties to do. You know, we still bring community groups onto the park, doing activities, whether it's staying in benches or planting bulbs and trees in the winter. Obviously with the foliage that disappears in the winter, the whole landscape changes. Sometimes we might be under snow, which we'll be doing path clearance and keeping the play areas tidy and snow free. So it does change, but sometimes, you know, it is similar work.
Do you think we get people visiting parks, or do you think we could get far more people into parks? Are parks well used these days? Yeah,
let's say up to about 20-30 years ago, parks wasn't being used what they should be used. There was neglect because of funding wasn't being spent on the park, and people felt a little bit unsafe. And then obviously we've got computers and phones and games, so we're trying to bring activities like kite making and nature walks back into the parks to get especially the youngsters outside into the fresh air and getting the benefits. But yeah, as we speak, over the last couple of years the parks are now being more and more used, and with us putting events on and our volunteers are putting events on, so there's lots more activities going on in the parks.
Right, so that's really good to hear. And one of the things coming up, it leads on nicely, is it a walk? Is it this weekend, May the 11th?
That's right, yeah, on Sunday, 1 o'clock till 3.
And tell us a little about the walk then.
Well, the walk is, as we've briefly mentioned, Moorpark is one of the oldest municipal parks in the country. We will say it is the oldest, but we've got conflict from a park in across the water in Birkenhead.
Oh, it's bound to be us.
They have a park they reckon is older than ours.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's similar, you know. But yeah, and there's an awful lot of history on Moorpark. I mean, I could sit here for hours telling you about the history which is on Moorpark, but I'll be doing that on Sunday as we walk around. But briefly, you know, we had a prisoner of war camp, we had an outdoor swimming pool, we had a World War I hospital, we had horse racing on, we even had a 9-hole golf course on the park in the 80s, and you can still see some of the bunkers that were still left there, which are changing some of them now to wildflower areas.
Right.
We had an event on a couple of weeks ago planting wildflowers. So that's what the walk is about. If anybody's interested in the history and like to find out more about Moorpark, how old it is and what went on there, then come along at 1 o'clock on Sunday.
Wow, because I'm sure there'd be lots of people not aware of that. And I mean, that's not too long ago, the 80s, is it, with the kind of golf course there?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to a historian many years ago, and I said, what actually classes as history? Because if it happened last week, that is really history. So he said, that's an interesting question. He said, what we tend to do is look around about the 30 years. Anything older than that is history.
Right, wow.
Some of our history on Moorpark goes back hundreds of years.
And I'm sure people, if they've not researched it, would be interested in that, the fact that there was horse racing and the hospital, etc., and the history of the parks. Often, not always when you think about history, do you think about history of a park? Do you think about history of a building or history of an event taking place, but not often about the history of a park? So where can people join then on Sunday to take part in it?
Well, it starts at my office, which is a nice office next to the bowling greens at Moorpark Avenue. And you've got all the avenue to park up in. If you wanted, you could park down the other side of the park, Deepdale side, where we've got a large car park. And then meet at my office, and we'll start off at 1 o'clock at that area, at the bowling greens.
Great. So as a park ranger, I take it that you do enjoy the outdoor life?
Yeah, I do prefer to be outside than in, but part of my job is indoor work, schools and events and indoor classes, making bird boxes that could be indoors.
And and as you say, these days many different events take place to get people into parks, particularly young people. Is the one event of the year that is your kind of favourite that stands out?
I do enjoy the egg roll event which we have locally here on Avon Park. I've been involved in that one for 14 years.
Right.
And to see all the families, But Moorpark is well known for charity events as well. We have the Race for Life, which we have 3,000 ladies who run for cancer. We have charity 5k runs around the park. We also had, going back to a little bit of history, Tom Benson walked around the park and set 2 world records.
In the park? Set them in the park?
Yes, in 1986.
Right.
He walked over 400 miles non-stop. And during them days, we used to have television celebrities came up and did a couple of laps with him, like Ian Botham, and a few others would do a few laps with him and have a chat with him and keep him going, And as you know, we've got a road named after Tom Benson.
That's right.
And he set the world record in Moorpark.
Wow, there you are. So to find out all about this, you need to be there at 1 p.m. and May the 11th. Can I thank you then for coming in this morning, Paul? Thanks for coming in and telling us all about this.
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. We hope you've enjoyed the interviews as much as we have. Why not give us a tweet at ChatCityPFM?